Hello and welcome to Code Over Time. My name is Kev, and in this video we're going to do a little bit of coding in VueJS. So in the last video I basically gave a little bit of homework where I gave you a task to solve. So if you've been following along, hopefully you had a chance to take a look at the code and actually play around with it. If not, today I'm going to go through the solution of what we talked about last week. So on our Varcade Games website here, I mentioned that we had an issue where if I scroll down to the bottom and I select our game and I press play, when it loads the next page, it preserves the scroll state, right? So the page is automatically scrolled down, which is just kind of annoying, right? You have to scroll to the top and then you can go ahead and play your game. So the ideal behavior is that when we click play, we move to the next screen and we have automatically scrolled to the top, right? That we're just kind of good to go. We should never be in a situation where the first thing you do when you load a new page is that you have to scroll to actually see the part of the page that you're interested in. So I gave a hint at the end of the video. If you didn't see the hint, what we need to look at basically is this view router and its scroll behavior. So the view router is basically the configuration that defines the paths to the various different URLs on your website. So for example, if we go home here, this is our home page. So that's just basically our localhost 8002 /. If I hit continue as guest, that is bringing us to a different URL that the router will be routing us to this page. If I hit play here, that is routing us again to another page. If I hit sign in, it is routing us to a page. So the router is the thing that takes care of moving around the website like that. So in our code, we have this in our website directory in the client source main.js is where our router is defined. So if we scroll down to line about 182, this file's a bit big. We do need to refactor it. I will do a separate video where we'll go through what a refactor would actually look like for a page like this. There's a bunch of things in this code base that we need to touch up, and I think they will make for good videos, because one thing that's really important when you're working on a code base is that you are regularly doing maintenance and just refactoring and tidying things up a little bit. So the router is what we're interested in, and like I said already, the functionality or the feature of the router that we're interested in is this scroll behavior. And what the scroll behavior allows you to do is say what is the desired position when you change pages. And you might think, well, why wouldn't you always just scroll to the top? Well, there are situations where, for example, let's say you scroll down a list of options and you click an option, you go to the page, and then if you hit back, you might want to scroll back to the middle of the list rather than to the top of the page and have to scroll all the way down again. I know I hate it whenever I'm using any sort of a website or an app, when I navigate away from a list and come back to a list and I've lost my position in the list. It is really, really annoying. So that's exactly what this is trying to deal with. So the behavior that we're looking for here is, you can see in the router, we can provide a scroll behavior function. And with that function, we can basically return, if we always want to scroll to the top, we can return a JavaScript object that says top 0. Now, we're going to go write the code now, but there's going to be some interesting kind of troubleshooting that we need to do here, because the documentation, to be honest, is just a little bit wrong. So what I'm going to do here is follow the docs, and I'll say function and return top. Oh, it's not right. Return top 0. And let's space this out a little bit because I like spaces. So that kind of looks like our documentation. I was explicit about calling this a function. You don't need to do that. So essentially what we should expect now is that when we select a game from the bottom and we go to the next page, it scrolls us to the top. But it didn't work, right? So what's going on here? Did we make a mistake, or did the documentation make a mistake? Normally, it's us that has made the mistake, right? But in this case, and this is why I thought this was an interesting little challenge in the last video, is that if you go and follow the documentation to the letter, you still won't get the desired result. So what you will have had to have done is maybe do a little bit of Googling, maybe have a look at Stack Overflow, see if anyone else has encountered the same problem. And that is a normal thing that as a software engineer you will be doing. So when you search around, you will learn that actually what you want to do here is say y is 0, because we're talking about coordinates, right? You've got your x coordinate and your y coordinate, and we can say we want our y, which is our up-down coordinate, to be 0. And if we write that and go back, hit play. Now it's working. Now we are actually scrolling to the top. So Vue 2, I know this is an outdated version of Vue, and we will do the migration to 3 at some point. That's going to be a big, huge job, but that is, the documentation is wrong. Then there's a few ways to approach this. You can actually, if you want, you can try and find a specific HTML element in the page, and you can scroll to that element. But in our case, we really just want to scroll to the top. So that's it. That's working. That's basically all of the code that we need to do to get this behavior. Add scroll behavior to our router. Now, there are some other things we can do here. And for extra credit, I think, as I already mentioned, it's really, really nice when you go back to a list that you were browsing and that it scrolls, it keeps you at the point that you were at, right? So here we want to go straight to the top. But now from this page, if I press back, it's bringing me to the top again rather than bring me back to where I was. And I just mentioned that that really annoys me. So let's see if we can get the router to behave in this way. Now we notice that the scroll behavior actually takes in a to, from, and saved position. So if I add these, now there are some warnings in the doc where your browser needs to support history.pushState. With most modern browsers, that should be fine. So yeah, we don't really need to worry about that. But what I'm thinking, because I haven't actually done this, I haven't tried this out. What I'm thinking is maybe if we look at the from, or maybe if we look at the to, okay, so if we scroll up a little bit and look at our router, we have games, which is our game portal. So this is our list of games, right? That's our list of games page. And then we have our play game page, and that's where the actual, that's where we're actually going to play the game. So what if we say if our to is equal to play game? Well, in that case, we want to scroll to the top, but not in other cases. So we've got some unused variables. Let's just deal with them and do a bit of exploration. Saved. We are set up here to be doing checks to make sure that we're not introducing variables that are unused, which I did by only using the to variable that we're passing into the function. We'll deal with that properly in a minute. So now if I come here and I select this and I hit play, okay, now we've broken our behavior. So let's see what's going on here. Because if we go into the console, we should be able to see where we actually, because we logged that, we should be able to see we are navigating to /games. All right, let's add just a bit more verbosity to this. Okay, so now we should hopefully capture when that is printed out. So scroll down, hit play. So we have got this interesting output here. So scroll behavior, and the to that's being passed in actually looks like a JavaScript object. So what if we say, well, first off, let's just get rid of these because we don't actually need these. And what if we say to.name? Okay. So let's just reset, scroll down the bottom, hit play. Scroll behavior is printing play game. Okay. So that should hopefully mean that we can test this out. So if we say to is equal to play game, sorry, we need to say to.name is equal to play game. That will then scroll us to the top only when our target is play game. So we are saying we want to have a specific scroll behavior on this specific page. So if I scroll down, I hit play, let's see what happens. Hey, it scrolls us back to the top. Now if I hit back, it is still scrolling us to the top, but I reckon that is because because our current, it's preserving the current scroll position of the previous page. So I think what we'll probably need to do is, we have to from saved position, and what we can do is we can actually return saved position, right? So we can have to, and here we're saying let's return saved position if, so we're saying if we're going to play game, we'll scroll to the top, otherwise we'll return saved position. We are going to get a error here on the from. And let me just so we have some clearer logging, and let's see what happens now. So again, as I mentioned the last video, anytime we make a change to our file, our code on our file system, we are basically going to trigger a full reload of the page. So we're getting this kind of instant feedback of our code changes. So let's scroll to the bottom, hit play, go back, and hey, we're in our position that we were in. So that's looking pretty good. I am no longer really annoyed because now I hit play and we are at the top. I hit back and now we are back to where we were, and we can continue browsing as we like. And that's it. That is the code change. So one last thing that I want to cover in this video is, how do we actually push these changes up to our repo? What should our actual workflow be for pushing changes and actually saving our changes? So first off, what we want to do is, you'll notice I was using console.log here because, you know, I hadn't used this feature before. I was just printing some stuff out to explore and kind of understand what's going on. So we probably want to clean up anything like log messages like that we're not using, and make sure that our code is nice and tidy. Now, if I write this, we still have our issue. Okay, it's not complaining about from anymore. Okay, never mind. We have our code and it's cleaned up, and I think that's pretty good for what we want. So let's have a look at Git. So we have pulled our code down from Git, and if you're not that familiar with Git, and if you've never used Git on the command line, it can be pretty intimidating and overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to go to our Varcade Games root directory. So we can see we're in our /code/Varcade Games, which is where we clone the code to. And if I do git status, it's basically going to tell me all of the files that were modified. Okay. So here we can see our main.js, which is the file that we were just editing here. That's main.js. That file has been modified, so Git is telling us that it's been modified. So git status is kind of one of the, I think there are 3 or 4 commands that on the command line, if you learn, you can kind of do most of what you need to do with Git, and then you can search, you know, documentation, or you can always do, if you just do git, you'll get a list of kind of commands you can run with it, and you can go read the manual, or probably Stack Overflow in all reality. But git status will tell us what's changed. And then if you're interested in the actual changes that were made, you can do git diff. And git diff will show us what has actually changed. So here we can see our new piece of code that we can introduce. There are pluses beside it because this line here was basically replaced with all of these lines. So we can see how many changes were made, and we can just review those changes and make sure we're happy with them. The final thing we want to do before we actually save this code is we're going to want to run npm run lint. Now, if you haven't set up npm, you're going to have to do npm install first, but npm run lint will basically run the linter on our code base. Do I not have it? No, sorry. We need to cd into our website client directory, and our node modules package is, or directory is here. So from here we can do npm run lint. And that's basically just going to check through our code and make sure that the changes that we made actually conform to the standards that we have set for the project. No errors found, we are clean. So I'm going to actually cd back to our root directory, and again, the git status will tell us what's changed and what is the file that we need to save to our actual repo. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say git commit, which is basically saying we're going to take this change and we're going to put it in the repo. I'm going to say -am, so this minus or -am, we're saying we're going to add all of the files, so any of our modified files, and we're going to add a message now. Okay, so the message I'm going to say is we're going to say add scroll behavior with a U because I speak proper English. And I think that's probably a good enough message for this commit. There's nothing too complicated here. But actually, no, sorry. We're not going to do that. What we should have done first when we're talking about Git workflow is check out a new branch. Okay, so if we do git checkout -b, this will create a branch. We can give it a branch name. So now we're in a branch. You can see along the bottom here, scroll behavior. So my terminal is telling me we are now on a branch. So now if I do git commit -am, so we're committing the code to this branch. We're saying take all of the modified files, and we're going to do our message inline on the command line here. So add scroll behavior to view router. Okay, so now we can see the response here. 1 file changed, 7 insertions, 1 deletion. The reason it's saying 7 insertions is, if you remember, when we did git diff, there was a bunch of plus signs. That was our insertions. So if I do git status now, you can see nothing to commit, working tree is clean. That's because in this branch, I have now pushed all of the changes that we made to the code. So what we will do now is we will do git push origin scroll behavior. And that's going to take the code that we have on our local machine that we've committed to the branch on our machine, and it's going to push it up to GitHub, which is the remote machine where all of our code is stored. Now, normally what might happen here is that when you're in work, you'll have a ticket or a bug or something like that, and you'll have an ID against the ticket and the bug, and you might name your branch the ID for that particular ticket with a little description as well. So this might have been, bug 123 underscore fix underscore scroll behavior, right? Something like that. And then you do all your work in your branch, you do all your testing, make sure it's all good locally. Excuse me. And then when you're happy, commit all your changes to your branch, and then you push your branch up to the repo. So what do we do now is the question. Well, if we come to GitHub, basically what we're going to do is we're going to go to pull requests, and we're going to say new pull request. And you can see it's already selected because we've only got one branch that we're doing here. So it's going to say we have our we just need to select our branches here. So we're going to say our scroll behavior into our trunk. And basically we can see our changes here. We can go ahead and create a pull request. And we want to leave a nice message here that says update scroll behavior on view router so that navigating to gameplay pages always scrolls to the top, but other pages preserve positioning. And that's basically it. Now, at this point, we can go ahead and merge the pull request, but you'll notice that there's a bunch of checks here that need to be completed. So basically, we've got automation set up on GitHub where when you go to GitHub Actions, you can see here, once we create a merge request, it's going to run through a series of checks, which will run all the linters and all the tests against all of our various different repos, just to make sure we're not committing broken code or something like that. If we go back to our pull request, we basically just need to wait for all of these checks to complete, and then we can do a rebase and merge, or we can create a merge commit. I'm not going to get into this now. There's many schools of thought on how to actually manage your history here. I just like merging, so I'll probably just merge the pull request. Ordinarily, what you're going to have to do is someone will come in and do a code review, and they'll come in and they'll look at the changes. So they'll go to files changed, and they might hit here and go rename these variables. This is terrible. And they will kind of nitpick and whatever and say, you know, if there are any changes that someone believes you should make to your code, you'll review them here. Usually being very nice and friendly and all of that good stuff. And you can basically approve here and say, this, I'm happy that this pull request is good enough to be merged into the main code base. Now, this is my repo. Just like the code you're working on is your repo, you don't need to worry about that for the moment. But when you're working with a team of people, that becomes very important. And here we're just going to hit merge request, or merge request, confirm. And now we see we are merged. So when we go back into our code, we have two branches here, but we'll see if we go to website, client, source, main.js, and if we scroll back down, you'll see our code is now in the trunk. These are the changes that we just made that weren't there before, but they've been merged from our branch into the main branch. So that's basically it for today. This is what it kind of looks like when you get into a development workflow, right? You make some changes to the code, you run some tests locally, you commit those changes to your own branch, you push your branch up to Git, up to GitHub or whatever source control you're using. You'll create some sort of merge request. People will review it. Hopefully you'll run a bunch of automated checks, and then the code actually ends up in the trunk. So this video was longer than I planned it to be, so I'm going to end it there. Hopefully that was useful. In the next video, we're going to move on from the front end, and we're going to start digging a little bit into the back end. So we're going to go server side. So that will be fun. Hopefully, I much prefer working on the server side. So yeah, hopefully that will be interesting for you too. That's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.